Hi, I'm Shila Wattamwar. I am the founder of Radiant Global Advisory and Sustainable Me Today. And you're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing.
Yeah. My name is Abhay Dandekar, and I share conversations with talented and interesting individuals linked to the global Indian and South Asian community. It's informal and informative, adding insights to our evolving cultural expressions, where each person can proudly say, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." So every once in a while on Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing, we share a spotlight and feature brief chats with an individual from the community about a special topic or cause. On this spotlight episode, I really wanted to chat more about sustainability, particularly at the critical intersection of the consumer, companies, and investors. Now, someone who's actively living at this intersection and helping everyone understand it better, especially when it comes to strategy and impact, is Shila Wattamwar. Shila worked for years leading investment research, focusing on environmental, social, and governance factors at Sustainalytics, which was acquired by Morningstar. She's now the founder and CEO of Radiant Global Advisory, helping companies implement foundational strategies to help drive decision-making, as well as the founder of Sustainable Me, a platform that brings sustainability education to people in the context of their everyday lives. So as we chatted about sustainability and parenting and behavioral change that's both urgent and long-lasting, I was first eager to learn more about how Shila would help describe what Sustainalytics might mean to a novice like me. How would you describe Sustainalytics to an investing novice, or even someone who's naive to the series of dots that's being connected, especially when thinking about managing and assessing a risk when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, sustainability is such a broad topic.
Yeah.
And, one of the things, in fact, that you helped me come to is really this narrative, is around the fact that there are these three primary stakeholders that need to contribute and that we need to mobilize in order to really be able to drive towards a more sustainable world. And that's the investors, it's the companies that they're investing in, and it's the consumers and the people, the everyday people that are buying things. And so Sustainalytics really focused on that investor piece. So for years, almost 10 years, about 9.5 years, I was with that organization, Sustainalytics. We were very small at the time. And really what we were doing is we were assessing publicly traded companies on their environmental, social, and governance initiatives. What were companies doing in order to manage the risks and as well as in turn manage societal risks associated with the environment and social and governance issues. I was probably one of maybe the first 5 employees in the US. This was a movement that was far more robust in Europe. But all of a sudden, when these issues such as bribery and corruption and lack of diversity in the workforce and carbon, credits and the taxes associated with them, all of a sudden when those started playing into a company's bottom line and were not necessarily the things that investors were thinking about in the forefront as they were selecting or choosing the stocks that they wanted to select in, as soon as people started realizing, well, look, this can actually make a difference, we started seeing a real uptick in interest, especially here in the US.
Yeah.
And it started with a lot of institutional investors, which means the large pension funds that are managing billions, sometimes trillions of dollars. But fast forward maybe 6, 7, 8 years, we're starting to see people really think about it and care about it. And so the way that I would equate sustainability or sustainable investing is personalized investing. It allows the opportunity for people to invest in a way that really aligns with their own values in the areas that they really believe in. And a company like Sustainalytics offers transparency around that. And I'll just quickly mention Sustainalytics was bought by Morningstar about 3 years ago. So we're now they're now a Sustainalytics Morningstar organization.
I was always curious about this because at the end there's this idea of sustainability. We've now had that pervade into the zeitgeist for so long, and it's an imperative. It's not even just a buzz. But why are sustainability research and those principles of responsible investing so important for business? And I intentionally use the word important. I didn't want to use the word good for business. In that way, are you seeing companies make that shift? And for that matter, this idea of responsible investing, or this attention to sustainability, why is that so important?
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's something that I would like to see evolve. So right now, I think the importance really lies in the push that they're getting from investors, and which is why I said investors are so important. But their push is only half the equation, right? To really have a company change and mobilize around these initiatives, they have to believe that it works well for them as well. And so right now we're seeing some shifts. You alluded to the principles of responsible investment, and the United Nations actually does have an entity called the UNPRI, UN Principles of Responsible Investment, and they have a number of investor signatories come on board to commit to taking responsible investing into their consideration, into their investment thesis consideration. And just to give you an idea, there's right now $121 trillion in assets under management that have a commitment associated with that. That doesn't mean all $121 trillion are going to invest sustainably, but those asset managers and those asset owners that really oversee those that type of capital have committed to looking at that across some of their portfolios. So again, major push from the investor side, but equally important, consumers need to demand it. And that's when companies will really start saying, hey, this is really going to be the next avenue for us. This is going to be, this aligns with what people are asking for. And so they don't just feel the pressure, they inherently then, want to change their business model. They want to evolve in a way that matches consumer demand as well.
Hearing that, of course, hearing that number, right? There's trillions in capital. But at the end of the day, it really does boil down to the behaviors of consumers, the behaviors of people, in a way. So why is it so hard to get sustainable products to be sticky in a market? From the vantage point of those people behaviors, how do we make this something that is just inherently, I wouldn't say believable, but something that we don't have to think too hard about, and that it's behavior change that is just so reasonable, but we don't think twice about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of it right now boils down to price point. We're still seeing a lot of innovation in the sustainable product space. So when you look at plant-based meats, for example, or you look at sustainable fashion, even sustainably sourced wine and coffee, chances are those things are more expensive.
Right.
The procurement, the costs of associated with those are more expensive, so the price point ends up being more expensive. Now, of course, the way to fix that is to increase demand on the consumer side so that the company is able to scale. And that's the other two real stakeholders in that equation, aside from the investors. It's really mobilizing in an interconnected way the companies and the consumers, making sure that they're kind of able to, a company is able to really scale and grow so that they're not just offering this really expensive niche product. And that's what RGA does. Radiant Global Advisory. We help companies with their growth strategy so they can actually increase their product to the point where they can actually create a real footprint in the market. And my other initiative, Sustainable Me, a little bit of a passion project, is really more focused on the consumer, helping them better connect to this idea of sustainability, not just hear about it or think it's a nice label, but really connect to the facts so that they are more inclined to take action, so that they themselves want to be able to demand for that they feel like even at some point, if there's a higher price point, it's worth it because they truly understand the benefit that's coming out of that price point. And then eventually, again, it being just the norm, especially once that product's able to scale.
It's nice how both your passion project and your advising project are so, in fact, intricately woven together, right? There's this idea of changing behaviors on the personal side and, allowing permission, so to speak, to say, hey, let's, even though something is not at the price point, for there to be, some allowance for that. And yet for companies who want to grow and scale, that there is actually a blueprint and a game plan on how to grow and how to do things in a way that will spell hopefully sustainability in the future for both of those groups. What do you see is the biggest barrier to doing that, right? Like for the companies to be able to scale and grow and get that price point down, and then for consumers and those whose behaviors and the change in behaviors is actually so important. What are the barriers for them as well?
I'd say probably education is the biggest barrier right now. Sustainability is certainly a buzzword, and it's presents itself in headlines in such polarized ways right now.
Yeah.
Greenwashing, the company is just putting things out there that they're not really doing. Yet real sustainability initiatives. So no one really truly understands what it means, let alone
Right.
who to trust, know who to trust. So I think that knowledge will empower both, to be honest, all three stakeholders
Yeah.
to really make some momentum. I think, again, it does start, I think, on if I were to say one, if I were to say which is the most important stakeholder, again, I would say the consumers,
Mm.
because they really do need to feel a connection, similar to how we felt connections with technological advancements like the cell phones and internet, or similar to how we feel connection with wellness. It all came through education and an immediate benefit.
Yeah.
So in sustainability, the education and understanding the benefit we're producing will, I think, really, move up that ecosystem and help the rest of it kind of come into play. But we all have to be speaking the same language, and we all have to be educating each other.
When it comes to empowerment, and particularly empowering consumers with that education, I can see how companies will then sort of in many ways see that as an opportunity. But I'm imagining then that third rail of investors then believing in it and actually fueling it will be the sort of next phase of that, or if not sort of an immediate phase. How do they get that feedback in some ways? Like, how will investors then feel that, hey, consumers are empowering themselves, and in fact we see this trend happening?
Yeah, I think it'll, right now on the investor side, people look at sustainability as a silo as well. So there's these sustainability ratings, which actually Sustainalytics and other
Right.
organizations put out. I think eventually, when it does really hit consumer demand and starts affecting, the financial health of a company, that will start trickling into how any analyst is looking at a company. It will become inherent to a business model. We're already starting to see that, but
Yeah.
that's where I think the investors will really start to see the value of some of this. And
um,
again, there are certain things that we're seeing already, like for example, a, a company having a whistleblower program
mm,
that protects them against, potentially protects them against downstream fines, or
right.
those that have a decarbonization program, helps them better equip themselves for a net zero economy. So we're already starting to see that. But again, I think that it has to become inherent to how investors are thinking about companies.
Is one of the ways to do this for the education? And I know that you mentioned you have a book coming out soon, but educating with simple things, right? I mean, it's not as simple as me just saying, hey, I'm going to buy a Tesla and be plant-based in my diet. it,
Yeah.
it actually has more to do with certain choices that I make, even independent of that, along with the product choices. But are there some two or three basic things that consumers can and should do immediately in some ways to empower themselves that much better?
I mean, I think the number one thing is just consume less. I mean,
Yeah.
as consumers in this current time frame where we're bombarded with social media and a number of other things, we're a culture of, we're a real consuming culture. We're
Yeah.
buying more than ever. We're buying, buying and eating more and so
Yeah.
forth. And fashion and food are two of the biggest emitters. We're traveling more. Travel is a major emitter as well. So, I think part of the empowerment is just really understanding at high level what's actually happening with those actions. And I
Mm.
do think it's as easy as making small choices. The book you mentioned, what I'm trying to do, and it's meant to be just a coffee table book.
Yeah.
And what I've done is outline 52 facts around sustainability. So, for example, it takes 2,720 liters of water to make one t shirt. That's how much one average person drinks over 3 years. My hope is when somebody reads that, they'll think twice about just throwing away a t shirt that's in perfectly good
Right.
quality. They'll actually donate it,
Yeah.
or they potentially will increase the life cycle of that. So, it's one behavior that they may decide to do that week. The 52 is meant to be one new behavior every week.
Yeah.
But they may decide, let's preserve that. Let's not buy the new t-shirt and let's reuse this one, or let's donate it instead of just kind of throw it in the trash. So, I think the more that we can be empowered with those majorly important statistics and start seeing that even our small contributions can make a difference, it makes all the difference in the world.
I had one last question for you. I mean, like, I love the idea of, small baby steps, and yet there's such an urgency for this, right? So, like, for us all to have behavioral change that's lasting, how do you behave? How do you build longevity when it comes to behavioral change? Not just for individuals, but again for businesses, right? It's part of their strategy also to have a longevity in this. So how can, in connecting those dots of investors and businesses and consumers, how do you build longevity with all of this?
Yeah. I think it's just making it the new norm. It's making it the next phase of innovation. So ultimately, we don't want to put a sustainability label on these things. We just want to make it the next way of living. And so, there's Energy Star appliances.
Yeah.
Why not just make every appliance Energy Star and that be the new norm? That be the next level of innovation around appliance making. Or similar to cars, we're heading that way with cars right now. EV doesn't have to be a sustainability initiative. It's just the next innovation in car technology. And so I think that's where, and I see private companies doing this quite a bit. Their next product or their next foray into business is just a new innovation, right? And that's how they're thinking about it, not necessarily creating something sustainable. And public companies will buy that innovation out, and hopefully that will slowly evolve everything.
Yeah.
But I think someone a mentor that I work with, she put it perfectly. She's like, sustainability just makes operational sense in her world, and that's where I think everyone has to start thinking about it that way.
You're a parent like I am, and I'm curious whether or not you've had any easily relatable aha moments where you've been able to sort of see that change, but particularly see it as a parent, because making operational sense
Yeah.
is something that you've found visible. Are there any particular examples of that for you?
Well, the one thing that has been an aha moment is how easily kids pick up these notions of sustainability. So, as the one of the big reasons sustainable me today is a passion project is because it gives me an opportunity to get my kids involved in learning about sustainability. And my older son does a little podcast for me
Yeah.
on a weekly-ish basis, depending on the week, and he talks about he demystifies a topic of sustainability within 5 minutes, and so
Yeah.
he learns about it himself, and he teaches my little one, and they will keep us real at home. If my husband and I are using paper napkins by mistake, they'll bring us the cloth napkins.
Yeah.
If we're forgetting to recycle something, they will take it out and put it in the recycling bin. And so, it so easily becomes a norm for them. And I think that's something that's really a positive aha moment, and something that, again, we should all really take advantage of.
I'm curious, has it made you more disciplined as an adult, being sort of mindful of how this translates to the next generation?
It has. Yeah, it absolutely has. It makes me think that, like, we should be teaching it, because these are ideals that they are going to want to embrace, and it's going to be that much more important and real in their lives, even more than ours. And so it makes me far more mindful.
Well, those ideals and that discipline and those principles of being responsible, and hopefully those that will be more pervasive, and we won't have to think about it as hard. I know you're helping to accelerate all of that for investors and companies and people. Shila, thank you so much for joining us. What a treat this was, and really, really congrats on all that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thanks for shining some light on this topic. I really do appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Shila. And please check out more at radiantglobaladvisory.com and sustainableme.today. Thanks again for listening, and please don't forget to offer a kind rating or review for Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing, and pass it along to your friends and family. Till next time, I'm Abhay Dandekar.